may remember last year that the former Health Secretary, Jeremy Hunt, demanded the government launch a public inquiry into the contaminated blood scandal. Well, today that inquiry's begun with emotional testimonies about the deaths of almost 3,000 people infected with HIV or hepatitis C by contaminated blood products. The tainted blood was imported from the US in the 1970s and also the 80s. Victims hope the inquiry will finally establish the truth about the greatest treatment scandal in the history of the NHS. Our health correspondent Paul Kelso has the latest for us.
This is an inquiry that many people have been waiting at least 30 years to begin. There has been a concerted campaign over the last few years, and as you said, the Prime Minister finally announced in July last year it would be held. It's taken more than a year to get to this point, but we've had 500 people here gathered at Church House in Westminster, victims, those infected with HIV and hepatitis C, and the families of those, the nearly 3,000 people who have died as a result, for a commemorative event at which there was a chance to reflect on those infected and those who have died of those diseases over the last few years. Very, very powerful testimony, people calling for someone, institutions and individuals to finally be held to account for what took place. People were, just to summarise very briefly, many haemophiliacs infected with blood products intended to improve the clotting of their blood that were imported from the US, where they'd been sourced from prisoners, from sex workers, from drug users who were paid for their blood. And then a separate strand of people infected by blood transfusions here in the United Kingdom from donors here at a time when there was simply no screening at all for diseases. And one of those who gave testimony this morning and we spoke to earlier on was Michelle Tolley. She described how it affected her when she received a transfusion during childbirth.
28 years that I had been infected with hepatitis C. I actually thought I was going to die. I couldn't see past a coffin. If that happened to me, how many more of me are walking out there? How many people's aunties, mums, cousins, work colleagues might possibly have that infection and not know?
Stories like Michelle's are extremely common. There is a huge group of people who until now have not had a focal point, unlike other great public scandals, for their anger. So Brian Langstaff, the chairman of the inquiry, is on his feet now, setting out his principles for this inquiry, and he does mention the allegation of a cover-up, that successive governments knew what was going on but failed to do anything about it, and he says he will pursue this inquiry entirely independent of government and hold people to account where appropriate. That will be welcomed, but worth bearing in mind, since Theresa May announced this inquiry back in July and it beginning today, more than 70 people have died. And with this inquiry set to last at least 2 years, many more will not live to see Sir Brian's recommendations.
Well, back here at Labour Party conference, Stephen Doughty is an MP. You were going to talk to us about the People's Vote, but I know you've had quite a lot to do with that campaign, haven't you? Tell us about it.
Yeah, I've been on the all-party group for infected bloods, and I've had many constituents actually who've been affected by the scandal, and some really heart-rending testimony from them about how it's affected their lives, but also the people who've lost their lives, sadly, before getting justice on this. I chair the all-party group on HIV as well. Many of these people were infected by HIV, hepatitis, other blood-borne diseases. It's one of those historic injustices which has to be righted. It's crucial we get to the bottom of what happened, and it's crucial that people get the compensation and the answers they're looking for.
Could take a couple of years and other people may well die in that time.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's why actually a lot of us were so frustrated who were campaigning on a cross-party basis for this for some time, because we were having people very much telling us that were they going to get answers in time for them and their families, and it's crucial that we get to that. Like Hillsborough, like so many other disasters, these are things that are historical injustices and need to be righted.
And how many people do you think have been affected?
Oh, it's in the thousands. I mean, I've certainly a number of constituents who were affected, some who've been able to live long and happy lives, but with health complications. And obviously, for people who are haemophiliacs, they were expecting the treatment that they required to keep them alive, not something that was going to infect them with something else.